You're listening to the Business and Life Podcast, where 7 days a week, proven entrepreneurs share their success stories, failures, and give you true value on how you can build a great business and an awesome life. With your host, Eavis.
What's shaking, guys? Today we'll be interviewing Eric Zimmer. Eric is the host of the One You Feed podcast and is also a behavioral coach. All right, Eric, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So tell our listeners something interesting about yourself and also where you're calling in from today.
I am in Columbus, Ohio today. I live in Columbus, Ohio, part of the time, and Atlanta, Georgia. And interesting things about me. Let's see. I am an avid student of Zen Buddhism.
Zen Buddhism?
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you go on like retreats or anything like that?
I do. Yeah. I've done
Very cool.
I've done a lot of silent retreats in my lifetime. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. So tell us a little bit about what you do and your company.
Yeah, my company is called The One You Feed. So it's essentially a podcast. So I have a podcast called The One You Feed podcast. We've been listened to over 20 million times so far. And I also do behavioral coaching work as well as spiritual teaching type work. I've got a program called Spiritual Habits that really brings together spiritual principles with the science of behavior change and how those work together to create deeper and more lasting transformation.
Awesome. What is the mission of the One You Feed podcast? What message are you trying to get across to your listeners?
Our subtitle is Practical Wisdom for a Better Life. So, I'm
Nice.
trying to really take all the wisdom that's out there, all the various ideas that are out there, and how do you actually apply it in a really practical way to your life so that you suffer less, enjoy life more, and thrive.
Awesome. Similar to mine. I like that. The Business and Life is about business and life. And I think those obviously how those things come together is my objective, to get the entrepreneur's journey like yours and get it into the ears and hearts and minds of those out there that are aspiring entrepreneurs, of course, and those that are current entrepreneurs, because we all could use the inspiration, but also understand the transparency, I think, of what life and what business sometimes brings. Give me a time where you felt during your podcast journey, entrepreneurship journey, you felt that you've kind of came to a crossroads or you've hit rock bottom and you had to overcome that objection.
Yeah, well, boy, there's lots of different,
Sure.
rock bottoms. I mean, my background has recovery from heroin addiction. At the age of 24, I was homeless, heroin addict. Looking at going to jail for up to 50 years. So that was a rock bottom in the business. I'll give one that's a little bit more current. And it was before the podcast started. I started a solar energy company. And okay. I did a solar energy company for about 4 or 5 years, and that ultimately failed. I ended up deciding to shut that down due to changing politics in the state of Ohio that changed a lot of the laws around solar energy.
Sure.
And at the time, that to me was, it was awful. I mean, it was very, very painful time, a very painful decision, but it led the way to the podcast and the coaching. And so it turned out to be, a really wonderful, in retrospect, thing. It led me to what I think my truest life work is. That was closer.
Yeah.
But this led me to my truest life work. And so it's that old saying, when one door closes, another door opens, which I think is so true. I think the thing that we often forget when we hear that phrase is that a lot of times there's a dark hallway in between. The one door closes and you're in the dark hallway for a while. And so sometimes, for me, it's been learning to walk down that dark hallway with some degree of faith that something, if I keep putting one foot in front of the other and I keep doing my best, that something better is going to come. And that's been the case for me over and over and over again. These dark moments have always led to a deeper transformation and a better life if I had the faith to keep walking.
That's awesome. I think understanding that challenges can become opportunities like that is inspirational to hear that from you, Eric, because our listeners might be like, I've had attorneys that wanted to buy out my yacht business, for example, one of the yacht companies that I have in Newport Beach, California, and they're both attorneys, right? They're husband and wife, and they're just over it, right? They want to do something that's different. And knowing that people are ready to make that kind of change in their life like you did. And it was kind of a rock bottom situation where like, I got to shut down a company that you put 4 or 5 years of all your blood, sweat, and tears into, right? Like your money, resources, time. It's hard to make that decision, but I'd love to have the listeners hear that and say, wow, listen, look at the transformation, right? And seeing that a challenge became such an awesome opportunity to create something that you want to do and that you wake up in the morning every day excited to do, right? Yeah. And that's pretty cool. And I love that part of the business and life angle that you have shared with us there. What do you think a lot of entrepreneurs out there, in your opinion, either fail or give up?
Well, because it's hard.
That's a good answer. That's okay.
it is hard. It's hard to, I see. I think that failure, to generalize it to one cause, there's so many causes, and some of the causes are things that we can control, and some of them are things we can't.
Sure.
And so, I spend my time working with people on the things we can control, and I think so. I think the types of failure that are preventable are the types of failure that have to do with how we spend our time, with the level of effort that we put in, with how distracted we get, with really. I would come back to that. I think the thing that we most can control is how we spend our time. And that's the area for most people that if we can really dial that in better and get much better at how we spend our time, really doing it intelligently and consistently and well, that gives us the best chance of success. There's going to be people whose businesses fail because of what's happening with the coronavirus right now, right? That's just going to be the reality. And that's unfortunate, and it's not anything that we do or don't do. So some of this is beyond our control, but there is an awful lot that we can control. And as Stephen Covey so wisely pointed out, that when we spend more of our time in our circle of concern, the things that we worry about but that we can't control, when we spend more time in that area, our circle of influence actually shrinks. And conversely, if we spend our time on what we actually can control and change, our circle of influence, that grows. And so it's just sort of this is a good time, as so much is happening right now that's out of everybody's control. It's always a good reminder. And I need the reminder that, like, okay, stay in my lane, focus on what I can change, what I can control, what I can do. And if I spend all my time running around worrying about all these things I can't, that's time that could be spent on what matters and not getting distracted.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. What you can control and what you can't control. And I think for any business owner out there, it needs to draw that fine line between the page and jot those things down, because there's what you can't control needs to be released, from a mindset and mental standpoint, and be able to move forward, and the focus on the things that can drive the needle forward are likely the things that you can control. And you're right, the coronavirus, like, hey, I own a national group travel business. We have hundreds of thousands of dollars of cancellations right now.
Yeah.
As we speak.
So you're living this for real.
I'm living it for real. It's crazy.
So how are you dealing with that fear? I'm just curious, but like people we've got some uncertainty. We've got some group programs happening in the summer. I don't know if they're going to occur, but I mean, like, for someone like you, it's like
right now we have hundreds of thousands of dollars of contracts out there that are in jeopardy with hotels and venues across North America. And the way that I'm dealing with it is I'm on this podcast today. Like, I hate to say that, but that's really, I have 14 hours of podcasting today, back to back. And the reason why I'm showing up, not just for the listeners, because that's important to me to make sure they know I'm dedicated to it, but also that I do 7 days a week, but also I know this would be therapeutic for me. And it is.
Yeah.
I'm talking to great people like you. I'm talking to great people that are leaders of their industry, coaches, VCs, you name it. That only does nothing but make my mindset a lot better than where it would be today. Cause I just found this out yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? And so it is a crazy decision. My employees and some of the people on the board probably weren't that, they didn't understand it, but I said, I'll get to it on Friday. It's not going anywhere. But I'll be back, and I know I'll be a lot more in a better mindset to approach that. But the way we're dealing with really is going to be contractual negotiations and legalities, right? That we're going to have to implement and enforce on contractual things. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, it can make or break us. And if anything, it'll be an opportunity. We got to view this as an opportunity. And I think everybody else that might be going through something like this, listening either, and hopefully by the time they listen to this, the coronavirus will be long gone. Let's hope, right? And so if that is the case, then we'll see, well, some of these things turn into opportunities. They make you think, how do I avoid this? And then that turns into an idea, a different model. All those things start coming into play. But the way I'm doing it right now, man, is talking to guys like you, and I'm excited to do it. Yeah. So because I got to, and I'm not escaping it, but I'm getting really good ideas as well. I think from some of the people that I chat with on a regular basis, but entrepreneur, it's just a journey though. It's part of the game.
It totally is. It totally, and again, this gets back to that faith I talked about a little bit earlier, that, you know what, faith in yourself and your abilities, in that you'll find your way through this. Your business may struggle, there may be challenges, but you personally will find your way through, and you will find work and business that is fulfilling, because that's what you do.
What's happening, Life Nation? Michael Eavis here. This is a time to do the right thing, not the profitable thing. I'm giving away COVID-19 business strategy sessions for free. I promise to give you my honest advice and coach you on a strategy that I feel would be best for the longevity of your business. I'm not asking you for your money, but in the interest of being able to help as many people as I can, I am asking you to be ready with your 1 to 2 specific questions so we can jump right into it. Go to michaelivas.com/coaching and simply schedule a call on my calendar. That's MIKEOLIVAS.com/coaching. Yep, absolutely. That's exactly right. I think at the end of the day, you got to have confidence in yourself and your skill set that you built over this, for me personally, 13 years, but we'll figure it out. And like I told the guys on these calls, that's what we do. We figure it out. We'll turn these difficult times into opportunities, and we'll push through, because we've had many of them before. And so this is a new one. So sometimes it's weird that it excites me, but it does. And I think fear and excitement can kind of have that same chill approach, but I was like, oh, here we go. Let's figure it out and start diving in. But you got to be able to do that, or else if not, it's easy to go under the blankets and curl up in a ball and just say, screw it. But you can't do that. Right? So
it is.
It's too easy to do that, but you can't, right? What are you excited about right now within your business?
I'm most excited about the Spiritual Habits program we recently launched, right? I think it's a little bit unique in that there's a lot of people out there teaching spiritual principles, things like mindfulness and acceptance and generosity and, allowing things to be the way they are. So there's a lot of that. And there's a lot of people out there teaching great work on how we make behavior change and how we build habits. But what I've seen, this is the missing link between people who are interested in things like mindfulness and acceptance and wisdom, but don't really know how to make that a transformative practice. It's something they read about. It's a podcast they listen to. Maybe they've got a meditation practice that they do, 15 minutes in the morning, which gives them some support. But how do they take these ideas through the rest of their life? And so I'm really excited, because I think I'm bringing two sort of different ideas together in a new way. And with the podcast, I've been able to interview all the leaders in the world on behavior change and behavior science and creating habits. And I've been able to interview many of the world's leading spiritual teachers. So I've been excited about the way this is coming together as a new program that we've launched. So I'm really excited about it.
How have you been able to use business to build, and your business, the podcast, and the different streams, obviously, around the podcast that you got going on, have been able to build the life that you want to live?
Well, it's interesting. So I started the podcast after the solar energy company sort of crumbled. I went back to my original career I was in lots of software startup companies and around software development. So I kind of went back to that. That's what I was doing professionally, but I was just kind of bored. And so I just launched the podcast, not because I was like, oh, this is going to be a business. I just did it because I was like, I felt like I needed it. On one hand, I was like, you know what? I need to spend my time immersed in wisdom and great ideas, because when I don't, I tend to head towards negative ground. I mentioned I used to be a heroin addict, right? I had just lost this business that mattered so much to me. And so I felt like I kind of needed it. And so I did it sort of because it sounded like fun and it sounded like something that would be good for me. And then that over time I did it and I was like, I love doing this. And then I started doing some coaching work with people. I was like, I absolutely love doing this work. And so it took me 4.5 years of doing the coaching and the podcast while keeping a full-time job separately to get to the point that this became my full-time career. That's been coming up on 2 years ago. But yeah, I spend my life doing now the work that matters the most to me. And it feels like it took me a lot of years to sort of find my way to that. Some people find their way to their life's work earlier. In my case, I think it took me longer, but I feel like I'm there.
What have you been able to learn, I guess, through that journey of, if you had to go back and say, wow, it took 4.5 years to get to where you are now. And I mean, awesome. 20 million listeners total. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah.
From one podcaster to another. That's amazing. What would you do differently within those 4.5 years to cut it shorter?
Boy, that's a great question. And I don't know. I can think of some things I might have done to cut it shorter, but one of the things that was valuable to me was that I didn't have to make a living doing it. And that allowed me to not have to make any compromises in, who we took on as sponsors. It allowed me to keep the integrity of the show as sort of the most important thing to me. So I don't know what I would do differently, to be honest, because I felt like that process really was, sort of the organic path.
Organic process, sure.
And it's kind of the process that worked for me. I think if there's anything I probably am still learning and that I could have done better in the beginning and could continue to do now better, is that I could have used the network of people that I was building with the interviews of the podcast that I was doing. I could have networked better. I think I got so, and some of it was the nature of it was I was so busy working a full-time job and doing the podcast. Sounds like you can relate with that. Like that, a lot of times it was like, I just got to get this thing out and get it done. But I didn't spend as much time thinking about like, oh, well, how could I be strategic by, I met this person, they could introduce me to this person who might be able to, I sort of paid that lip service. And I just don't think that I used the the value that was there. And I probably also could have started working on community building, creating ways for members to interact with each other more early on. Perhaps I might have done that also, but that's remained a challenge to sort of figure out how to get to happen. People say that they want community. They say they want to meet like-minded people, but by and large, we're a culture that isolates itself, and it's been hard to find ways to build that community with listeners, even though it's something that often people say they want. I found it harder to build in reality than it has been what it seems like it should be.
I think that's a good point. The community piece, and people, like you said, say they want to do it, but are they actually active also within those communities? Out of all your successes and failures in business, what is the one piece of pardon advice that you'd give to the Business and Life Nation out there listening today?
I think the most important, it's a phrase. I think it's I never get the quote quite right. It's from Arthur Ashe, and it basically says something like, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And I think that whatever situation we're facing in life, wherever we are, whatever our goals, there's always a way to take a step forward. There's always a way to start. There's always a way to, but so many people I know are, well, I'll start that, I'll do that when this thing lines up, when these circumstances line up. And that's not the way life works. If I'd waited till I had the time I needed to build the podcast to build it, I never would have built it because I didn't have it. I just started and I did the best I could. I put out the best show I could week after week, and then things transformed over time. So I just love that idea of starting where you are, using what you have, doing what you can. There is a way to make progress on your goals today.
That's great advice. And I think if anyone's getting some great sound bombs out of this, and at least looking through the dotted lines here is that you've been able to, Eric, you just had massive patience, man. And I commend you for that, because you 2 years, right? 2 years, like who waits 2 years for something to like pan out and potentially monetize? And that's important. I know that personally for mine, and you're right. I've been able to do it while I have other companies and revenue streams, but definitely it's a patience game. And as long as you're enjoying what you're doing and giving some value and getting some great advice like yourself, Eric, giving it to our listeners today, I do appreciate that. Where can people find you?
OneYouFeed.net. It's all spelled out. ONEYOUFEEE. Let me try that again. FEED.net.
Got it.
OneYouFeed.net.
OneYouFeed.net. Check out Eric. Thanks so much for jumping on with us today.
It's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Life Nation, you've got to remember that in order for things to change, you must change. And in order for things to get better, you must get better. You just got better by hanging out with me, Michael Eavis, and the Business and Life Nation. So come back tomorrow, because I'm here dropping sound bombs 7 days a week, baby. If you'd like to subscribe, please do, so you can take action and execute. See you tomorrow.